Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Please let this record show that this meeting has been duly called and notice this meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. We do have 6 trustees in attendance, and I believe Mr. Schofield will be joining us at a later time. First item on our agenda will be our board workshop. Be the Spring 2023 Bond Proposal Workshop. Dr. Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're happy to bring with y'all today. This is a bond workshop focused in on the recently recommended 17,000 plus student plan and also a potential bond election to be called in February of 2023. So I wanted to just kind of tell y'all our game plan for the next hour and a half is we'll have Dr. Johnson will come forward and she'll talk to us real briefly about the work of the LRPC and what that looked like. Then we will go into the details of our 17,000 plus student plan. We'll talk about the bond proposal itself. And then we'll get into some discussion about potential bond propositions and how we could potentially break up the bond package into propositions. Obviously, we've built in some time for discussion. And at the end, if time permitting, we have Jonathan Aldis here from VLK Architects to take y'all through a potential campus design exercise to begin to get some of your thoughts on how it is that we might design some of the buildings and get some general preferences that y'all have related to that. Okay? So our experts in the room today, I'm very grateful to have Dr. Lizzie Johnson. She's with Transcend 4. She was our facilitator for our long-range planning committee. Thank you, Lizzie, for being here today. We have our financial advisor, Doug Witt, and Doug is here to answer any questions that y'all may have about the specifics of how it is that we may want to structure a bond package. Jonathan Aldis is here from VLK. He's our principal architect with whom we've been working for quite some time. And then Trent Smith is here from Zonda Education. Y'all know that Zonda is our district demographer. And so we've asked these folks to be here. I think Trent's going to have to slip out on us a little bit before 5, but we do have folks here to be able to answer questions that y'all may have in the course of the workshop. So thank y'all very much. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon, President Autry, Dr. Hollingsworth, Board of Trustees. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. Always great to come back to this area. So just a reminder about our committee. We did have a cross-section of your community that was pulled together. Every table had different representatives. You can see our picture up here. This was our final night of voting. Some of you, many of you, all of you had a say in the committee's makeup, along with district admin. You know, we had parents, we had grandparents, we had students in the room, staff members, business owners, clergy, you name it. We just did everything we could to draw in a representative approach to many of your voters so that people in your community could look to that committee and say, oh, well, so-and-so, I know them, I'd like to go talk to them about what was going on and what the final outcome was of the committee. One bullet on here that I really would like to speak to is we had some people in the room who in the past may not have been so supportive of your district initiatives when it came to bond elections. And we spent a lot of time on the front end, the middle, and the back end with many of the committee members. Dr. Hollingsworth can tell you that I spent a lot of time on the phone with many members, talking to them, meeting with them when they would miss a meeting and come back to the meeting the next time and having some private conversation to catch them up. But what we did was we really laid the foundation of education. This wasn't the district spoon-feeding a committee or handing them a list that needed to be just rubber stamped. It was truly a lot of education every night regarding the finances of the district, the capacity, the growth, the current state of the facilities, and what programs we can continue to offer for your students so they have an advantage in their schooling. Can someone help me how I do this?
Do that. I got you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, he got it. So as you can see, these were our 6 meeting agendas. I won't go go through every one of these, but I will tell you that they were designed very strategically so that we built up to decision points. The committee did not just put a bond together one night. They had multiple times that they worked on this. They worked on it at home, alone, just thinking of all of the things they had learned so far. They came back to the room and they worked on it as a table. So that table group that they were in was very close to them because we never allowed them to move to other tables. They got to know the people at their table very well. And I also watched many of them, excuse me, they would talk about who wasn't there and how they would need to go catch that person up. And so it became a bonded group at each of those tables. And then finally, the final night was when they came back and actually put the final package together. So there were a lot of steps in this. You can see all of the presentations that they had, many from the experts that were introduced earlier. The district did not lead all of these presentations. We brought in our third-party advisors and the people that you lean on as a school board and as administrators to help with some of those hard decisions and just, the advising that you need in those certain areas of financing, facilities, and growth in your district. And then finally, this was something that we talked about a lot in the committee. We showed this slide every night. I use this slide every time I work with adults because a lot of adults do not work together. They work in silos and they work singly in their profession. And so we do talk about how we go through the gradients of agreement and how you don't necessarily veto something if you can't agree with 100% of it. Something that I was very adamant about in that room was saying multiple times every night was that not everyone in that room was going to get everything they wanted, but everyone in that room was going to get something they wanted. And that really built some camaraderie at the table because they brought in different viewpoints and were able to speak to all of the different angles that we were approaching as a committee to make those final decisions. And so one of the things that we had heard from the spring, because if you'll recall, we did 2 meetings in the spring to prepare the committee for these 6 meetings that we had this fall. And those were no decisions-making meetings at that time. It was purely informational, so we didn't have a lot of time for table talk and Q&A. We answered a lot of questions via email, and we did have some, but not a lot. Well, this was a totally different experience, and anyone on that committee will tell you that when they came back this fall, we had multiple times where we had Q&A, table talk. They were able to go talk to their friends at other tables. They always had admins circling the room and answering questions and the experts who were in the room presenting. And so there was never a point where we felt anyone was being slighted or not heard. Plus, they had my cell phone number, they had my email address, and they were able to contact me at any time, and I was able to get them any information that they needed. So instead of just sending it to that one person, Jenny can tell you that multiple times we sent many emails to all of the committee if any singular question was asked in between meetings or any point of data was needed by anyone in the committee. We never wanted questions to go unanswered or concerns to go unanswered or unheard because of the weight of the decisions that were being made. Okay. Yes, sir.
Very much. Okay, I want to talk to you now about our 17,000 plus student plan. This is one way to look at the plan and give you an overview of where we land at the conclusion of this 10-year plan. We prefer to call it a 17,000 student plan, but that's about where we anticipate being in roughly 10 years. Y'all know we have 3 junior highs. And so think about our junior highs all being expanded to accommodate 1,200 students, okay? So look across the way. We will end up, at the end and the conclusion of this plan, we will end up with 4 1,200 student junior highs. And each of those junior highs would then purely feed 1 comprehensive high school. You'll notice that Global remains a part of our mix. It's right there in the center. Global stays as part of our solution, but when we finish this, we'll have 2 junior highs feeding each of our comprehensive high schools. To give you kind of where the math comes from, you think of a 3,200 student high school, and we know it never works out perfectly this way. That means you have 800 students per class, okay? So then theoretically, at a maximum, you're drawing 400 students from your 8th grade class at one junior high, 400 students from the 8th grade class at another junior high. And so that means with 400 students per class, that means at a maximum, the size of your junior highs is 1,200 students, because you have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all with 400 students at a maximum, okay? One thing that you can kind of envision that's on here, but we didn't include it on the slide because it makes it really, really busy, but roughly you have 3 elementaries that would feed each of those junior highs, okay? The last thing that I make really clear with our staff, one of the reasons that pure junior highs are really important is you want your 2 junior highs to purely feed one high school, your 2 junior highs to purely feed the other high school. I always use the example of Rich Armstrong wants to know which 2 junior highs he's going to work with for those musicians to be feeding him. Does that make sense? Okay. And your healthiest programs always have those pure feeders if possible. This is another look at that 17,000 plus student plan, which is really what you're going to get overall. This is not in a particular time format. This is just what you would get. You'll notice at the top there's phase 1, and at the bottom there's phase 2. Phase 1 is what this first bond proposal would focus in on. Phase 2 would come in a future bond proposal, all right? What are you getting out of phase 1? You're getting a replacement campus for Wildman STEAM Academy. We basically double their capacity from 415 kids to a capacity of up to 800 kids. You would get a new neighborhood elementary number 10, and you would get a new neighborhood elementary number 11. So essentially, in this phase, we would increase the number of seats by about 2,000, okay? Because you're adding 800 and 800 and then 400 more, because I'm doubling the capacity at Wildman, all right? You are expanding the Hancock building, you're expanding Finley, you're expanding Howard. So that gives you those junior high facilities that would accommodate up to 1,200. This phase 1 includes comprehensive high school number 2. It includes facilities upgrades. That's what you see there with the screwdriver and the wrench. That's your facilities upgrades. And then potentially addressing Lumpkins to be able to accommodate 2 competing high schools. Down at the bottom, the things not addressed in this particular bond would be 2 neighborhood elementary schools. That'd be elementary number 12 and number 13. And then also that 4th junior high. Those are not included in this particular bond proposal. Capacity now and capacity in the years to come. If you were able to perfectly use all of our current seats that we have in the district, our current is in that left-hand column. You currently have 5,400 seats at elementary, 3,400 at junior high, and 3,700 at the high school. Now, we know that we are not able to perfectly use every single seat that we have available because you're talking about, that would require us to constantly be adjusting attendance zones. And that's not a realistic way to be able to handle your capacity. One thing that I've pointed out to our staff is that if you look at your elementaries, we're already feeling the crunch at several of our campuses. Simpson comes to mind. Simpson currently, we're already, as y'all know, we're already at capacity at certain grade levels at Simpson, most of our grade levels at Simpson. If you're moving new to Waxahachie and you've moved here from out of state and you've bought a house in that North Grove area, those folks who are showing up with kids right now to Simpson, most of those kids are being shuttled now to Shackelford because we're at capacity at those grade levels. Another school where we're feeling the crunch now is Clift. Clift already, we have 2 or 3 grade levels. Right. And so Clift is another example of an elementary where we're already at capacity at certain grade levels. Okay. You can see junior high and then high school where we sit currently. After Phase 1 and Phase 2 bond projects, so this would be after we complete that 17,000 plus student plan, we actually would have seats that would accommodate more than 20,000. So I think that's a really important thing to note, that this plan actually gives us wiggle room beyond 17,000. It doesn't just get us to 17,000. Okay? Comprehensive High School number 2. I want to give you a few thoughts about Comprehensive High School number 2. Like WHS, it would have an expected enrollment of 3,200 kids, all right? We would expect it not to be an identical school with WHS, but to be commensurate with WHS. We would expect a second comprehensive high school to also accommodate up to 3,200 kids. We would expect it to offer all of the same kinds of programs that we already offer at WHS. So this would be a competing high school that would include fine arts and athletics and your foreign language offerings that we have. We would expect to have a similar CTE kind of facility, but not to be necessarily a duplicate of CTE. For example, what you can do and what most districts do that have 2 high schools or more that use your CTE programs, you might have some marquee programs that are unique to the second comprehensive high school. You might have some, and I would anticipate we would have some. For example, we might choose not to duplicate culinary arts. Culinary might remain one of those programs that's unique to WHS. However, we could still have introductory culinary programs so that kids at both high schools would be able to take advantage of those offerings. So those are some things, just as we begin to think about what this program could offer. And the thing is, none of these are set in stone. We've got the time and the ability to shape up what we would put into the CTE programs at Comprehensive High School number 2.
I don't want to interrupt your train
Sure.
of thought, but if we only have a freshman class, do you still compete at the varsity level?
On a freshman class, no, sir. When you're opening up a brand-new comprehensive high school, you grow into that. So typically, you'd start with your freshman level athletes.
Okay.
The next year, you might add some JV programs
Okay.
and so forth. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Calden, and he can talk you through junior high upgrades.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, board. As mentioned, as part of the 17,000 plus student plan, there would be some renovations and expansions of our current junior highs. Right now, we're looking at the Hancock building where Global High School currently is. The capacity of that building is going to be around 700 students. And so to get it to 1,200, you would be looking at a renovation and expansion of the cafeteria area. That's that green box down there towards the bottom of the picture, along with a rather significant addition along that front side that's kind of facing the HEB, the back of HEB, if you will. We're kind of looking down on it. Indian Drive is at the top of the screen. And so you would see a significant addition along the front side with the academic classrooms that would give us additional class spaces. You would also see an addition on the right over there, over by the athletics wing and by fine arts. That's right off of the end of the current music building that's been converted to a health science facility. But that kind of would show you the nebulous additions and expansions and renovations of the Hancock building to get it ready for up to 1,200 students. At Finley, you're not seeing as much in the way of classroom renovations and additions because at Finley, we believe we can house 1,200 students right now from the classrooms that we have. But we do know that Common Core areas are not sufficient to support 1,200. We know that the office space is not sufficient for 1,200. The library, the cafeteria, the kitchen, even going back towards the band hall and the counseling areas, those would not be sufficient for 1,200 students. And so in lieu of bringing in portable buildings to add as those extra spaces, we'd be looking at a minor renovation and space addition for some of those areas for 1,200 student capacity. And then at Howard, the building itself will hold about 1,100, so we would be looking at about a 4-classroom addition. One of those may even be a science classroom at Howard, but we believe the rest of the core spaces, the library, the cafeteria, the office space, would be sufficient to house up to 1,200 students, the staff to support 1,200 students. In addition, one of the propositions calls for facility upgrades. Since the 2017 fiscal year, the district has spent a little over $6 million on large projects throughout the district. These projects include flooring replacement, HVAC, phone system replacements, painting, furniture, digital signage, playground equipment, and roofing repairs and replacements. Of that $6 million, about $1.2 million of it in that time has been spent directly on HVAC systems out of our M&O budget. Life expectancy of our HVAC systems is approximately 20 years. We've been doing really well at some campuses, getting closer to 23 and 25 years out of some units, but we also know at others that we're not as lucky to get 20 years out of some of those systems. So the reason that we've included some money in this bond is because we are not able to keep up with those HVAC replacements out of that M&O budget going forward. And so in lieu of stacking them all and having HVAC go out throughout the district at the same time, we'd like to start renovating and replacing those on a more determinable replacement cycle going forward. So this was not just stuff that district leadership sat down and came up with. We engaged our architect and went campus by campus, excluding WHS and Simpson because they were the two newest campuses. This is one page from the Findlay Junior High report, and I know it's super small and you can't read it, but it's super nerd fun on there. Jonathan, I say that with love because I enjoyed it too. But it was very detailed. We went site, we went interior, exterior, we're talking furniture, all the systems within the building. We're talking the flooring, the roofing, HVAC, mechanical, plumbing. We can keep going because it's super nerdy and fun. But we had the architect walk every campus, come up with a listing of things, but then we engaged campus principals as well and said, okay, here's what we see, but tell us in your using of the facility, what are we missing? What are the things that we are not accounting for? Because we're looking at end of life for equipment, we're looking at functionality, we're looking at fire alarm systems, but tell us what it is that we're missing with your campus. So we did have campus principal input as we went through these list to develop the priorities for the facility upgrades that we are presenting as part of this bond. We generally divided those up into priority 1 and priority 2 items. Priority 1 items are those items that have an end of life or a safety issue within, like in an immediate within 1 year of where we are. So if you're talking a roof that is habitually leaking and on the verge of failing, that's most likely going to be a priority 1 item. Priority 2 items, we're talking items that are getting close to the end of their functional life or lifespan, but they might have another 2 to 5 years left within them. So this is our best guess at how long that 15-year-old air conditioner is going to last. Will it make it another 2 years, 5 years, maybe it's 8 years? But it's also looking into the future and saying, we know that this roof is still in good shape, but we also know this roof is 25 years old, and it's time to start thinking of a replacement for that roof. So wanted to kind of go over rather quickly, and I'm not going to mention all of these, but just kind of a couple of projects per campus so that you can see some of the projects that we're talking about.
I want to add to board, y'all will get individually, this is what you'll get. This is from the LRPC work, and so it'll be a full notebook for each one of you, and it includes in detail, you can look campus by campus of what's included.
So at Clift, a priority 1 item would be a partial roof overlay. Board, you've heard that we've had some roofing issues over at Clift, and we've been able to slowly start making good headway on some of those leaks, but we've also noticed that some of our prior efforts, adding extra weather stripping and other components, hasn't been as successful. So now that we've found that a partial overlay in certain areas is working, we would like to do that in the rest of the building to reduce some of our water intrusion issues that we've been having. A request from the campus principal was to remove the lockers in the corridor areas. It's not an item that they use, but those were originally installed when it was thought to be a junior high facility. At Dunaway, we know that the fire alarm system is reaching the end of its life, so that's one of the systems that we would target as a priority to replace over at Dunaway, along with a request from the campus principal for restroom renovations. It's not that they aren't functional, they are functional, they work, but they're also outdated. And so we would like to look at bringing those up to a more modern standard. When we go to Felty, we're looking at HVAC. We still have some issues with geothermal in some parts, and so we'd like to look at replacing those with more conventional systems that will reduce the load on the existing HVAC system, the existing geothermals, so that they will function more properly.
On that subject, remind me where we are with the Finley geothermal. Is that behind us?
Finley does not have geothermal.
What am I
Howard
thinking
does.
of? Howard?
Howard.
Okay. Yes, Howard.
Since we've replaced the large units in the athletics area, I have not heard any other complaints about HVAC issues at Howard.
But it's still in operation.
Yes.
Oh, we
it's
didn't
so we
mothball
took
it.
the
Okay.
We took the
We're supplementing it.
geothermal unit off of. We took the HVAC unit over the gymnasium off of geothermal and put it as a conventional unit. And so the rest of the units that are still geothermal on that loop are not having near the strain. And so they are working properly at this point. And that unit is standalone as a conventional unit and that we're not having issues with. And so that's, to Mr. Rogers' point, that's kind of where we're looking at going with some of these other geothermal units that we still have issues with periodically, is removing that capacity, that load that's on that geothermal ring and replacing some of them with conventional, but using that geothermal to the best of its ability until it's time to replace those units.
Do you know how old Felty Elementary is? What year it was built?
I believe it's 2008 or 10. I want to say 8, but it was before me. At Marvin, I do note that it says replace the original HVAC system, so that those units are roughly from 2000 with the renovation of Marvin. And so, again, looking at units that we've experienced greater than 20 years worth of life from, but we do know that those are going to be getting short in their operating cycle, so that would be one of the priorities that we'd be looking at. And then working with the campus to identify wall surfaces and replacing those with something that's less scuffy and it will make the campus look nice for years to come. Over at Northside, this is one of our oldest roofs still in the district, and so it is one of our top priorities in terms of replacement. And then the campus has requested that we look at replacing the water heaters in the kitchen, because we know that those are part of the health code and making sure that we can serve quality food to our students on a daily basis. And so that would be one area that we'd be looking also at Northside for replacement. At Shackelford, one specific item from the campus is to add a canopy at the front entry for drop-off and dismissal. The canopy is not sufficient to extend down the sidewalk, and that's actually one thing that as a district we are working on right now to try to get pricing on and see if we can't incorporate that into the current year budget. All that to say, all of these projects, as best we can, we will try to continue using M&O funds to do them if we can, but if not, then that's where these bond funds would also come in handy and help out. We're also looking at replacing some of the electric distribution equipment at Shackelford. At Turner, looking again at electric panels and restroom renovations. And then at Wedgeworth, some driveway repairs, and also enlarging and reconfiguring the dining room. We believe that by moving some of the walls around the dining room at Wedgeworth, we'd be able to accommodate more students in the cafeteria at a given mealtime, instead of having to sit some in the hall or be so packed in. At Wildman, we're looking to replace the grease trap. That's not a super fun item, but it's one that if it goes out, we're all going to know it. And then also looking at repairing the parking lot area. If you've been over there, we know that there are some potholes that will swallow cars if you don't go through them the right way. And then at Coleman, in addition to our junior high expansions we were talking earlier, at Coleman, we'd be looking at door and hardware replacement, along with flooring and repainting in parts of the facility. And at Finley, we'd be looking at classroom flooring and ceiling replacements, along with renovating some of the restrooms there. And then at Howard, we'd be looking again at HVAC systems, part of those geothermal units, And then, again, replacing that fire alarm system that we expect to be reaching its end of life in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Calden. Now I'll take you through the bond proposal, and you've seen this, but I want to go through and show and break it down by a potential construction timeline. If you look at, and one of the things I point out to our staff as we're giving our presentations, we really were charged not only by you, but a major piece of feedback we've received from the community was to bring a plan. So we're not just bringing you, hey, we want to build 2 elementaries and a high school. This is a plan. And so this was one that was laid out by our long-range planning committee. So these are the first dominoes that would fall. You would build a new Wildman STEAM Academy on a separate piece of property. And we'd also build Neighborhood Elementary number 10. So those would, in our best scenario, those would open up in August of 2024. Global would then move permanently back to the Wildman building. That's a building that is smaller. It best fits the early college high school model. There are a lot of larger suburban districts. An example would be Mansfield that have comprehensive high schools and an early college high school that operate side by side. And so we think that Global should be a permanent part of our solution. You would expand the Hancock building, as Mr. Calden described, and then as soon as that building is finished, we would be able to move the Coleman Junior High over to a better, newer facility for the long term. Once the Coleman building is vacated, that would allow us, an emphasis on the word temporary, to temporarily house our freshmen at Coleman Junior High. It provides really needed relief in August of 24. We're already feeling the effects of 3,000 plus kids at WHS, but that would allow us to provide temporary relief by moving our freshmen off campus. Okay? Moving to August of 25, that's when we would expect to have Findlay expansions completed that Mr. Calden described, and we would expect those classroom additions to be completed at Howard. We could bring on, at that point, elementary number 11, and all throughout 24 and 25, we would be finishing up those facilities upgrades that Mr. Calden just described. We'd skip August of 26 because it takes a while to get to 27. By 27, we believe that's the earliest we could bring comprehensive high school number 2 online. And one of the things that I think would ease concerns of those, the first time that we're getting away from having one single competitive high school is that typically when you open a new comprehensive high school, you don't open it with 4 grades on day one. You typically would maybe start with either freshmen and sophomores, or even some districts start with just the freshman class. And so then you would have freshmen, you could potentially add your sophomore class the next year, juniors the next year, to where the first time you're really having a 4-year competitive high school with all 4 grades is about 29 or 30, is about when you're bringing those on board. At that time, you probably don't have 2 6A high schools. It's very possible that you'd have a 6A and a 5A. And now, our demographics show us that by about the mid-30s, we'll be back to having 2 large 6A high schools, because at that point, we'll have to be having conversations about another high school potentially coming online in the late 30s, okay? This is where we wanted to talk about propositions. I want to remind you, you have your experts who are here and available as well. This is an option for bond propositions. And I would strongly advocate for keeping as much of the plan in place as possible. Educational facilities at the new Wildman STEAM Academy, Neighborhood Elementary number 10, Neighborhood Elementary number 11, your expansions at the junior high in Hancock, and your facility upgrades. You could put all of those in Proposition A. My conversations with y'all individually and together has been, I've heard a lot of desire to separate out comprehensive high school number 2 as a separate proposition. So that's what you see reflected here as well. So you have all the things you saw in that plan in phase 1. Also, your proposition B, could you be comprehensive high school number 2? And then proposition C would be those Lumpkins preparations for 2 comprehensive high schools. The next one I would direct you to is option B. And again, these are just given to y'all as conversation starters, ways we can begin to talk around this. Option B would be your educational facilities, and everything's the same on option A or proposition A, New Wyoming STEAM Academy, Neighborhood Elementary number 10, and expansions of Hancock, Finley, and Howard, all right? What we did here is we pulled out Neighborhood Elementary number 11 to give you an option there if you so chose to do that, okay? What that means is we believe we could rock along with elementary number 10 and a New Wyoming STEAM, but I will tell you it does not give us as much flexibility, and we will be in a we'll be in a bind sooner, obviously, if we don't have Neighborhood Elementary number 11 as well. You would obviously, just the same as we did in option A, would separate out comprehensive high school number 2. D could be your facilities upgrades. You'll notice that your facilities upgrades were included in Prop A on this one, but you could separate out your facilities upgrades here. And then Lumpkins preparations. C and E we put in italics because you have some flexibility there. There's one or two of you have mentioned perhaps Lumpkins could be, paid for in a different way other than through bond funds. So that's why that's italicized. That gives the board some options to play with. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. President, and let you take us through some discussion.
Okay, so this is a workshop, so you're able to speak freely as we go through one of these. I'll ask if there's anyone that wants to start on any particular item, and then we're just going to work through it one by one, kind of see if we can reach a consensus on what direction we want to go. Does anyone want to go first? Go ahead.
I have a question on the Lumpkins preparations. What all does that entail? I think I remember you saying it was some turf practice field. Was there anything else? And what was the time frame and whatnot to get that completed?
The big ticket items on that, Mr. McCutcheon, are a replacement of your playing surface, because it would be a surface that would go from being just for the Waxahachie Indians to one, for example, that would have your Waxahachie ISD logo in the middle, Indians on one end, high school number 2 mascot on the other. Okay, so that would be part of it. The other would be some additions of turf practice fields on those practice fields that are just outside the stadium. Those are the ones that are used right now for Coleman Junior High. Those are some that could be used by the program as practice fields. And then also finishing out that dirt room so that you would have a locker room facility that is on par with the WHS locker room facility for that second comprehensive high school on game days and is the main deal.
Okay. Most of that's probably a summer project too, I would assume. Just, I think the current football field, we completed that over the summer, didn't we?
Certainly could be, yes, sir.
What's the dollar figure attached to that?
What was the dollar figure on the Lumpkins preparations, Mr. Carlin?
About 6.6 million, I believe.
And we wouldn't fully need it till 2027, is that right?
At the earliest,
At the
because you're
earliest.
not doing varsity competition yet at that point.
So my question would be, as our CFO, is that something that could be absorbed into our budget over the next 4 to 5 years and eliminate the need for issuing bonds for this?
Speaking real honestly, I doubt it. With the forecasted growth that we're looking at with the number of additional students, and the additional staff that will be required, instructional staff to teach them. I doubt it, but it's definitely something we could look at if that's a priority of the board. Yes, sir.
Could part of that be done in-house by our maintenance people, like the renovation of the indoor facility, or is that out of their?
A majority, I don't necessarily mean to speak for our maintenance people, but a majority of the work is going to be akin to new construction in terms of finishing out the dirt work. The exterior work, the replacement of the turf and reimagining of the current practice field to a turf field, that's not stuff that we're going to have the expertise to be able to accomplish. But a majority of the interior work is going to be akin to new construction. I don't know that we would have the resources available to move efficiently enough to make that happen in the timeline that
Thank you.
Another option too, I would tell you also, is you could potentially move that Lumpkins, any work to be done at Lumpkins, into a second bond proposal, a phase 2, if you will, coming up when because you're going to have to finish elementary number 12, elementary number 13, junior high number 4. That is a time that you could look at that piece as well.
So based on that approximate timeline, we can absorb $6.6 million in a 6 to 7 year budget? I know how you could stretch $1. That's why I'm asking.
So realistically, we're in the 23-24 budget starting next year. And so to get to 27-28 budget, I'm looking at about 4 cycles. I don't realistically believe, given that we have about $2.5 to $3 million extra dollars every year, that if we're going to have the teaching staff to accommodate student growth, and this, if we were to dedicate the funds to do this, I'm taking them away from additional staff raises, that M&O pot of money. I honestly can't tell you right now without putting pen to paper to it that I would feel comfortable doing that.
I got a question for you. Everybody knows I'm an athletic guy, extracurricular guy, ag. I love it all. Why would we turf practice fields at that location when we're busing kids from WHS over there? I don't see the need, I don't understand the need of a turf practice field there. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm about to be stand to be corrected. But then we're still absorbing the daily cost of moving those kids back and forth, which to me is a liability financially and from a dangerous standpoint of moving those kids. Would that money not be better spent getting WHS athletic facilities where they should be, so those kids can stay there and we're not moving them? You know, because that's a piece of that. Because if we're going to have a junior high over there across the street, I really honestly don't care if the junior high kids have turf. Sorry. You know, I played a lot of games on grass and a lot of practice on grass, and I'm still alive. So that's just a question for me of, does that make the dollar stretch further and solve the problem we have at the high school? Because that's a problem, moving those kids every day.
Yes, sir.
And just initially, I mean, just looking at these general, this is the only thing that's not directly tied to academics.
Yes, sir.
One
To
thing,
answer Mr. Schofield's question, though, and his comment, I'm sorry, Ms. Kriegel, is you could potentially pull out those practice fields. They were part of that $6.6 million figure for Lumpkins. You could pull out those practice fields. You're already bringing that down to a much more reasonable amount. You can talk about resurfacing just your playing surface and then finishing out that dirt room for a second locker room. That can make that obviously more doable financially.
Still think you got to address the devil in the room of moving those kids every day. You know,
No doubt.
That to me is more of a priority than the other.
That is not something that the committee, they didn't go down that road. They didn't go down the road of, hey, we want to go back and touch WHS. You know, so.
Well, maybe they have the information.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, but that's important.
I just wondered if moving the freshman class out, if we would have room at WHS for, you know, that'll free up some space In the athletic facility, would there be room, you know, to keep them there at that time?
Well, I think it would provide you some room temporarily, but we know that currently, you know, once we grow, we're already at 3,000 plus, and so we know we're going to end up back at 3,000 plus as we grow as a district. So we would have to make some adjustments to it prior to that.
Ryan, did you put a number on, Proposition D, Delta, the facility upgrades? Is there a number?
So on
related to that?
D, that was broken down into priority 1 and 2. The two together, I want to tell you, are $58.5 million. I believe it's 20 and change on the first one, and the delta on the rest, 32, I believe, or 35 on priority 2.
I only know this, but the D on this slide does not have to be broken out.
Doug, will you come to the mic, please, sir?
So when you put up the propositions, we have a new law that says there are 6 things that have to be outside of the primary proposition. Those 6 things are like stadium improvements, recreational facilities, auditoriums, technology equipment, etc. We still have the ability to have voluntary second and third propositions, but the only thing on here that I see, and I'm not an attorney, but I speak to the attorneys every day, but the only thing I see on here that's a mandatory second proposition would be Lumpkins. Clearly, I understand that the desire to have the community vote up or down on what on this list is B. That's a voluntary one, but the facility upgrades would normally be in Proposition A along with the other items. Facility upgrades are an ongoing improvement that's necessary for building use life. They touch multiple campuses where the A only touches certain campuses. So clearly we would want folks to see it as a facility improvement plan that included all of the campuses. The other thing that the attorney mentioned is that for the longest period of time, for 30 years I've been doing this, 9 out of 10 elections in the state of Texas were single proposition elections. We wanted voters to vote up or down on the plan and not just say, no, we don't want the HVAC at this facility, but we want the renovation at this one, etc. We want all voters who are interested in the school system voting on a singular plan. And that's why we would have, whether it was 1 million or 1 billion, we would have a single proposition election. Now we have multiple proposition elections, not by voluntary nature, but by mandate under the law. So they fit into certain categories. So when you look at this, I understand in this situation here, what you have up there makes a lot of sense to me on the option A, because it limits to 3 ballot propositions. If you want to look at statistics in the state of Texas, for the longest period of time, our single proposition bond elections would pass at 75% rate. When we went to the multiple proposition elections, we had a cycle in there where the primary proposition passed at 58% statewide, less than 60%, and the down ballot propositions were at 50% or less passing. In our last cycle, the primary proposition passed at the more normal 70 to 75%, but the down ballot propositions continue to have challenges and struggles at about 50%. So when you think about down ballot propositions, you need to think about what a voter views of that. In this case, you can explain why you would do it A, B, and C. C is by mandate, B is because we want you to decide. But from my perspective, A touches the facilities at each campus in the district, providing the useful life, expansion of the useful life, the new structures, the new spaces that you need to deal with growth. So those are my thoughts on what I'm looking at on the screen.
Thank you,
I want to
Doug.
ask the board, is anybody opposed to having a high school on a single proposition by itself?
No.
Anyone?
Kind of where I was going,
Yes, opposed to it. Okay, so.
kind of where I was going earlier was to create a third option that split out the expansion and the facility upgrade that put those together, and then the 3 elementary schools together. Maybe we can talk through that, the downside and upside of that.
Before we do that, so we're all in agreement that the high school is fine on one proposition? All right, done.
And
We
C
can make
has
that
to be,
happen.
and C has to be.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
If we decide to do that, C has to be.
Right.
Okay.
But we could move C to phase two, and
No.
that would work. Isn't that
Oh,
what you said?
To phase two.
You could. You could, or you can just say, hey, we're going to commit to, as the president said, we could commit to over time, we're going to accomplish those things through our M&O budget. As difficult as that may be. So, is that what,
It just gives me heartburn putting an athletic proposition on there, just to be honest with you. It does. Give me.
I agree.
Turn your microphone on.
It is, but
Is
to-
it needed?
to-
Absolutely.
To Clay's point, I think it would show good faith if we didn't go for the 6.6 as proposed, if we did what we need to do, and the playing surface at Lumpkin, the primary playing surface, and then the locker room renovations to accommodate the second high school.
But what is that dollar figure? We don't know,
Yeah.
right?
It's less than 6.6.
Right.
I want to talk about real quick, as far as the idea of pulling out your expansions at Hancock and Finley and Howard. To the point that Mr. Witt just made, you're creating more down ballot options for folks to potentially just decide, I don't want to give them that. I'll give them the elementaries, but I don't want to give them that. And I know there's some, well, let's get some kind of a win, if you will. And I just want to say that I think the work that's been done here really does reflect a significant sentiment on the part of a lot of the community. Put together a plan. Don't just bring us a hodgepodge of 2 elementaries and 2, expand the junior highs and do a high school. This is a plan. And I would really encourage the board to consider keeping as much of what you see there on that Prop A together, so that we are at least able to put the plan into place. So let's say, for example, that Prop A is passed and Prop B is not. We still have much of the plan moving forward. Does that make sense? And we are able, that moves us down the road. It doesn't move us down the road where we need to be, but it moves us down the road. So that's my recommendation on it.
The facility upgrades gives me a little bit of heartburn as well. That's why I asked how old Felty was. I mean, typically these bonds are issued and be paid off over 20 years, correct? 30 years, even worse. Okay. So, I can't honestly issue bonds for 30 years on things that are going to last 15 to 20 years.
Glad you went there. If
So-
you'll permit me
Absolutely. That's why I went there.
to interrupt your discussion.
That's why I went there.
Beat me to the punch.
So, President Autry, you bring up a really good point. So we do, not to get too basic here, but we do have 2 different types of bonds. We have serial bonds and term bonds. Serial bond, I'm issuing it now. I got maturities that are lined up over the next 30 years. So if I issue $100 million today, I don't have $100 million due in 30 years when that bond matures, because I paid off principal in some given manner that Mr. Witt and his band of geniuses come up with to pay that off over that 30 years. A term bond, on the other end, I issue $100 million today, and 30 years from now, I owe $100 million, and I'm going to pay interest every 6 months along the way. I do not diminish that outstanding principal balance over the course of that 30 years. We have one issue that is a term bond right now. That is a qualified school construction bond that was issued back in 2011. Those bonds are almost due. They're due in the next, I want to tell you, 5 or 6 years, and we make semi-annual payments into a cash holding account for that fund, about $165,000 or $170,000 a year that we're putting in there. We're not retiring the principal. We still owe $56,000 worth of interest every 6 months on that account. But we are setting aside money that when those bonds are due, $2.5 million, we will pay them all off in one lump sum. That's a term bond.
The bulk of that interest was paid by the federal government, hence the reason why the longer term didn't hurt you.
Yep, it made sense at the time of issuance, and then we did a federal sequestration, and let's not go off on that topic. So, serial bonds, these are more akin to what we have. We can develop a plan of finance that over the next 30 years, we will have differing levels of principal mature in those given 30-year cycles. So, to Mr. Autry's point, if we have items, let's pretend of the 58 million that we know 20 million of it is HVAC. We can work with our financial advisor to develop a plan to where those $20 million that we'd be spending on HVAC all mature within the next 10 years. Same general thing for if we said that 15 million of it was going to be for floor replacements, which wasn't very heavy on that list, but floor replacement, we would expect a 15 to 20 year lifespan on that, so we may develop that to have a 15-year principal payoff over those serial bonds. My point is, if the board were, if the public were to approve these bonds, we would not issue them as term bonds to where the entire principal balance is due 30 years from now. There would be maturities of these principal balances along the way, and Mr. Witt and his team will help us make sure that we are not exceeding the useful life of assets with those maturities. So if we're expecting HVACs out of this bond, we'd make sure that we've retired principal in the same amount or more of the HVACs that we'd be replacing in this bond, so that you're not in that scenario that you're describing, still owing money on that item, but having replaced that item already once or twice.
Now, I didn't see a lot of things on that list that's gonna last 30 years. So that would be mandatory as far as
So
I'm
a
concerned.
lot of the items on there, a big bulk of that is the new building constructions. Those are, with the projected inflation right now that we're building in to keep these a conservative number, a lot of that bond is moving towards the construction price on those facilities. So just to give you a rough idea of what we'd be looking at from a drawdown perspective, most likely, because we could not do all of this work in 1 year, we'd be looking at 3 different drawdowns over these bonds. So we'd be looking at about 200 million in 23. That would be to get us going on facility renovations, also with building elementaries 10 and Wildman, and then working on the renovation and expansions of the junior high facilities. In 24, you'd probably see another rough $200 million that would continue those facility upgrades. It would also be elementary 11, and we'd start working on high school design and the preliminary site work construction at a new high school. And then in 25, the remaining 175 million essentially would go towards the completion of that second comprehensive high school project.
Mr. Autry, in the extreme,
Doug, can you come up here, please?
in the extreme example to what Mr. Collin just mentioned, by law, Texas school bonds can be issued for technology, for example. So some districts will vote the down ballot proposition to renew their technology program, but they will also vote it on the same ballot with school building bonds. So for example, if I have a $10 million technology proposition and a $90 million school facility proposition, it's incumbent upon us to amortize $10 million in the first 2 to 3 years and impact the tax rate with that. And we can do the 90 million over the traditional 30 years with an option to prepay in 10 years. So for example, this district has prepaid on bonds before. You have, in our current situation, a buildup of cash that would allow us to prepay on some principal that was amortized longer many years ago. So we can accelerate those payments, but we do need to match it to the asset mix that we have, which could be anywhere from technology to 50-year useful life high school buildings. But we usually only go 30 years with the initial amortization, with the 10 years to prepay, even though Texas law allows us to go up to 40 years. So,
Okay, for our experts in the room, can we have a little bit of Proposition 101? I know, Mr. Witt, you had mentioned that, was it a couple years ago that districts started using the propositions, and what's your experience overall with, it looks like, I know some of the information that we've been given, some of the the first one will pass, how many are too many, just maybe kind of in a nutshell.
yeah, so again, before the law was passed that forced us to have multiple proposition elections, 90%, 9 out of 10 of every school district election in the state of Texas, year in, year out, was a single proposition election. And that was whether or not it was for $1 million or $1 billion. We voted $1.3 billion bond elections that were single proposition. To your point, that was a plan, a growth plan. We're going to get to high school number 6. We're going to get to junior high number 12, and elementary school number 25, or whatever the number is. So then the law changed, and they forced us into 6, what I call down ballot propositions. Those 6 propositions are technology equipment, an auditorium, performing arts center that is primarily and predominantly used for paid performances, teacher housing, recreational facilities, and stadium improvements with seating over 1,000. Okay? So that creates an interesting thing about ballot propositions. We used to call it primary proposition and then athletics, generically athletics. Well, today athletics cannot be combined. For example, baseball, softball, and an ag show barn purely for show could be considered a recreational facility and aggregated on the recreational ballot, and the stadium improvement is separate and distinct from that on a stadium proposition. So those are the kind of weird things that we get. The other point that I would have made a long time ago is that in today's world, when we sell Proposition A bonds and we get that money, if we come in under budget on construction or we have interest earnings on the construction fund, that could be used for some of these other projects that we're talking about. In today's world, interest earnings on the proposition is treated as that own proposition. So any savings on A cannot be used for C in terms of some of those improvements that y'all would like to see. What we do know, and I'm not a survey person, I'm just the witness of what vote counts come to what bonds we're going to issue and for what purpose. But what we do see is there's a general belief that as we go from the primary proposition down to the others, it in essence indicates a priority, which is not always the case. High school number 2 could be an equal priority for you as Proposition A. You just want them to vote on it to let us know how they want us to go forward. It doesn't mean it's a lesser priority. It means it's better for a different reason. So when you start getting, some people call it voter fatigue as they get down the ballot, generally the proposition amounts become less, and therefore they think that they're lesser priority and they're less important. And that's the challenge that we have on down ballot propositions. To your point, it does take education. For example, if we do have the facility upgrades in there, we may get a question in a public meeting of, are you doing 30-year bonds for these type of renovation projects? And the answer is no. The bonds will be issued up to a final maturity of 30 years, but there will be amortization over the entire 30-year period, including year 1, year 2. And any set of bonds that we sell is going to need to match the useful life of the assets that we're funding with that bond program by law and in addition to just pure finance.
Doug, I want you to speak to, and just for this board, because I don't know that this has been a common practice at all in Waxahachie ISD, but are the facility upgrades that you saw Mr. Calden describing, are those in any way uncommon in the bond packages that you see around the state, around this area?
Definitely not uncommon, but I did kind of dig deeper into the weeds there of what each of those line items were, because renovation to me is a general term. We can use bond money for construction, renovation, equipment of school facilities. But a renovation in reality is different. So painting and carpet is different from rebuilding an entire entryway for safety reasons. It's brick and mortar and windows, etc. So I start looking at what is a facility upgrade and dissecting, is that more of a 10-year asset, a 5-year asset, or a 20-year asset? And a renovation can be all of those. So not for tonight, but for us as we implement the program that y'all work on, that will be something that we discuss often with each bond sale.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lizzie, do you want to add anything to Ms. Starnader's question in terms of what, kind of your experience and what you've seen relative to propositions?
Mr. Witt is correct, and that's what we see when there's multiple propositions. people go into the ballot box and, on election day, and they think in terms of their home. Well, here's my home, and I have this much money, in my opinion, and I'm gonna do A, B, and C, but not D and E. And so it's very similar. They give you the top items, and then they start striking the bottom ones.
Thank you.
And, sorry.
No.
I was just pausing in case anybody said anything. It's because you're gonna have a lot of people that are very informed as to why you have these needs, and then you're gonna have another group that's not, because they just didn't get the information. So they feel that because it's in an order, those are the order things you need. So that's just normal.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, tonight's discussion is about the facilities, the facility improvements, the student growth, and the needs, et cetera. It's less about specific plan of finance for that. So the one thing that's in the back of my mind that may not be for discussion tonight, but at a later date, is depending on what the price tag is for each of those propositions, at a certain point, most fast growth districts get to 50 cents, and you have plenty of neighbors that have gotten there. And what happens at that is whether or not we vote 500 million or 800 million, it's the same tax rate. So eventually we're going to have to say, okay, well, if I vote for all of them, what's the tax impact? If I vote individually for one of the proposition, what's the tax impact? That's something that I think will add to the discussion of the program of how you proposition and how we discuss it with the voters.
Thank you.
Can we get an approximate cost for each one of these propositions based on option B?
Okay, option B. So let me just look at, while we're on option A, and then I'll go to option B. Option A, your comprehensive high school number 2 is $322 million. Lumpkins preparations is $6.6 million. And so your remaining part for A would be $247 million, roughly. All right? And then if you look at option A, that would be backing out. That would back out your neighborhood elementary number 11 if you back it out, which is 42. And then if you back out facility upgrades of 58, that makes A roughly 147 million. Comprehensive high school number 2 is 322. Neighborhood elementary is 41.8. Your facility upgrades were right at 58. And your Lumpkins preparations are 6.6.
Calculator, what's that total? Do you have the total?
Total is right at 576.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to, an observation I noticed was that in '21, the bonds in May were pretty successful. And then, of course, in '22, I think overall they weren't. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with inflation and all of that. So would one be safe to assume that probably, 2 propositions would be enough? I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, that's possible. I think what you heard clearly from Mr. Witt and from Dr. Johnson is that fewer propositions historically, statewide, seem to do better. The other thing I would tell you, observations from 22, is that your suburban districts fared better, your urban districts fared better than did your rural districts. And I would also just say, we tend to be much more suburban in 2023 than we are rural. So,
One thing that I wanted to check into, is the architect here?
yes,
Okay.
Mr. Aldis is right there.
Is there any way, looking at A, we're gonna have 3 elementaries, Wildman, and then 2 elementaries. Is there any way we could just tweak Wildman to make it appropriate for a STEAM academy? You know, tweak it a little bit in the building, rather than, and have 3 elementary listed as 3 instead of the $12 million price tag that we.
So you're talking about tweaking the existing Wildman campus?
No, well, no, tweak the new Wildman STEAM Academy.
Yes, ma'am.
So build a regular elementary and don't spend another $12 million for a
You're
while.
referring to the delta between.
But just tweak
10 and
it
11.
to see, accommodate what's needed.
The trick with the Wildman campus, the more, we've gone through programming on Wildman, so we really know what's required for Wildman. Programming is just identifying what spaces need to be in there. And because of that STEAM program and the specific spaces they have, it ends up being a larger campus because it has things like a specific robotics lab and tinker spaces that aren't necessarily reflected in 10 and 11. So right now, it's larger because of that reason. Without kind of a change to the program or use of the building, it doesn't quite fit in a number 10 footprint, so to speak, just because of how they deliver instruction there and the specific focus on STEAM is the way it's come across in our program. Am I saying that accurate, Dr. Holmes?
I understand, but I just wish there were some way we could get, you know, all 3 elementaries at around the same price.
I understand. I struggled with that a bit myself when I was putting the numbers together. But again, while we know our sites for 10 and 11 and we don't know for STEAM, there's still some uncertainty built into that. So some of that money may not be spent because it's about whether we have to extend a roadway or utilities. While those factors are already off the board for 10 and 11 because we know those sites and we have those unknowns already built into the number.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So how would you guys like to move forward? You want to set another workshop date? There's no way we're going to be able to work through this, and in my opinion, one more meeting, I wouldn't think.
Let's set another date. Can we get these slides sent to us too?
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
I've got a question just real quick, Mr. Foley. Going back to Lumpkins again, you said a while ago that if we try to do that through our budget, then it's gonna hurt teacher raises and other types of things, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. My point was that would all come out of the same M&O budget that we use to hire staff, retain staff, and compensate staff. So if I've got $1 and I'm gonna use some of it on the Lumpkins part, I don't have it to use for staff retention and recruitment and raises if, out of that same pot.
Before we meet again, can you give us that dollar figure with that cutout that Clay said? Whatever that was.
Yes, ma'am. I will go back and try to figure out what that number would be without the additional turf practice fields behind it.
Okay, thank you.
So this is largely a reflection of what LRPC proposed, right? Were propositions, at least 4 and sometimes 5, or?
No, sir. These are not recommendations from the LRPC.
Okay.
These are just a starting point for conversations. The LRPC gave you a plan, but
Okay.
no, sir, they did not go down the road of giving recommendations for
Okay,
propositions.
that's what I wanted to make clear. And with respect to Lizzie and Doug, I believe that our community wants choices. I believe at least 4 are appropriate, in just my opinion. I believe that's why the law changed, and because the politicians believed that that's what the constituents wanted was propositions and more freedom, I guess you would say, to choose, pick and choose what they feel were important. But I do understand their point about, you know, the down propositions and voter fatigue and that the psychology of it all. So I do believe there are to be multiple propositions, but how we configure those is, I guess, negotiable.
Out of all due respect to you, John, I reached out to my leadership group and just said, okay, what are you doing? What's passed? What's good? What's not? And they said the fewer propositions, the better. So to get it down to, to one or two, they said one, but I think that we all agree that we need at least two.
But no offense, usually pretty blunt, usually know where I stand. I can't support a bond on one proposition. I can't. I can't.
No, and I'm not
just
saying we
can't.
should, I'm saying that that's what they
I just wanted to
said.
put that on the record. I cannot support this all in one.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that, I said that's what they said, but they said the fewest that we could do. I wasn't saying we needed to go with one. I think we all agreed to that.
But I will agree that the fewer the better, as we put it together. But one is not an option for me. Anyone else? Go ahead.
One more
This-
comment, Mr. Rogers, to you, just so you understand what the committee was charged with. You know the charge and what their job was. This came up, they asked, who's responsible for propping this out? And we explained to them very clearly that that was the school board's decision with leadership consult and bond council, and they were totally fine with that. No one in the room was upset about that. They understood that that was just another level that they didn't get in the weeds on, that they were there to put the package together. I just wanted to make that comment.
Anyone else before we close the workshop and go to closed session?
Mr. President, could we get maybe kind of a general feel of where the board is relative to maybe A versus B? Would that be a reasonable conversation to kind of give our administration some guidance on what direction to go in?
Okay, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll go first. I'm a B.
Okay.
B as well.
I'm an A.
I'm leaning more towards A. I'm still questionable about Lumpkins, just because I think we maybe can do that at a later date since it's not needed immediately.
I'm A.
I'm still kind of in between both of them. Maybe 3 or 4 propositions, and then, obviously, the high school needs to be on one. I like the facility upgrades, though, with, as continuing the plan. Yeah, I don't think athletics will help us. And I know there's the STEAM Academy, I know sometimes, I agree with that. I just know that I don't know, I just think that might be something that some people might, I think, have contention with.
Okay, and I will give you some response on that. That question came up with our staff as we were doing some of our visits. The reason that, and Jonathan explained it, it's a programmatic thing. There are some specialty kinds of things that are part of STEM instruction, STEAM instruction, if you will, that are not necessarily part of every elementary's instruction. And the other thing is, our plan would be for Wildman to remain a school of choice. It would remain one that is drawing from all of our attendance zones across the district. So it is designed to entice folks to want to apply to and bring their kids, and in some cases, us have some hub transportation to allow kids to participate. And so it's designed to be an attractive option that causes folks from across the district to want to apply to go there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That's helpful, and I appreciate having the feedback, from y'all.
Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we will go into closed session according to section 551.001 et sec of the Texas Government Code. It is now 5:19. It is now 6:05. We will reconvene back into open session. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Rogers to lead us in our invocation, followed by Everett, Eleanor, and Adeline Lockridge, and Kaylin White with our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Y'all bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for just this opportunity to come together and meet as a community and just be with us, guide us, and direct us as we make the best decisions we can for our staff, our students, and our community. In our Lord and Savior's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our vision is to be a district where innovation thrives and growth is limitless.
We value choices because they make us unique and are critical to learning.
We value a collaborative culture that honors and supports all who positively impact the lives of our students.
We value an environment of belonging that respects individual differences and ensures equality for all.
We value relationships that broaden learning experiences and enrich our community.
Okay, next item on our agenda will be our recognitions. Ms. Bridges, I believe we have several of those tonight.
Yes, sir, we sure do. Good evening, Board and Dr. Hollingsworth. I'm excited this evening to first recognize a group in our community who is making a huge impact on our students. Could I invite the Lions in the room to come up? Stand right here. On November 17th, the Waxahachie Lions Club, coordinated by Dr. Jeff Kasoris, provided free vision screenings for 34 WISD students. 2 local optometrists, Dr. Marvin Brown and Dr. Alex Robinson, conducted the screenings. All students who were screened are economically disadvantaged and without insurance and were identified by their teacher or campus nurse. All students who were found to need glasses received them for free after the Thanksgiving break. Students were able to choose their own frames. Lee Ovenshine and I have something in common in that we both had first grade teachers who identified the fact that we needed glasses. There is no greater roadblock in learning than poor, uncorrected eyesight. And we are so grateful to our friends in the Lions Club for removing this roadblock for 34 WISD students. Thank you. Board, next I'd like to invite Stephanie Heimbuck, Principal at Dunaway Elementary, and Ginger Alamon, Assistant Principal at Dunaway Elementary, to come up.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Hollingsworth, and happy Board Appreciation Month. We are thankful for you and all that you do for us. So for our Hero of the Month tonight, Miss Alamon, my assistant principal, and I would like to recognize Miss Widget. Miss Dawn Renee Widget has been at Dunaway Elementary for 4 years, and in that time, she has impacted in a way that is immeasurable. She's a leader on campus, and she supports her team consistently through many stressful times that they've had this year. She's always positive and pushing the campus forward in our commitments and our goals. She builds relationships with students on day one that last past the walls of Dunaway. Students not only love her class and what they are learning in ELAR, but also Mrs. Widget's book discussions and fun learning environment. She works with a DI team of students from secondary campuses in her free time to continue to build upon that amazing team that she led to state last year. This month, we are proud to honor Dawn Renee Widget with the Hero of the Month Award. And for our campus highlight. At Dunaway Elementary, we have celebrated the 4 core values in many ways so far this year. As a dual language school of choice, Dunaway Elementary affords all students the opportunity to learn through choice. This year, our youngest learners in our dual language setting are currently learning in a 90-10 environment where 90% of their day and all core content is in Spanish. Our Spanish immersion students, formerly opt-ins, are learning to read, write, and speak Spanish in this immersive environment. Students across the campus are learning the school chant, Pledge of Allegiance, and Pledge to the Texas flag in both languages as well. In addition, for all of our students, there are opportunities to learn outside in our outdoor learning environment or outdoor science lab, as well as choice of many after-school activities like writing club, garden club, percussion and choir, and now, starting this semester, chess club. For belonging, we strive to ensure that all students feel like they belong. Our counselors' guidance lessons are interactives, and students learn sign language while learning about their social-emotional needs. Our student council and media club ensure student involvement in both campus decisions and delivery of information to the campus. Throughout the year, we celebrate cultural diversity and differences through events like Hispanic Heritage Night and Black History competitions. We work with students to set goals and celebrate as they reach those goals, no matter how big or how small. We strive to celebrate growth for all students.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Hollingsworth. All right, so there are many opportunities for student collaboration at Dunaway, as well as parent collaboration. Throughout the year, we have held numerous events such as Hispanic Heritage Night, Fall Festival, Winter Festival, and Literacy Night, where students collaborated to learn about different cultures and topics. During the day, we have an innovation time that allows students the opportunity to collaborate with other students and teachers outside of their classroom for deeper learning. Our 5th grade students partner each week with a kindergarten class to help push our little learners even further. Collaboration is a key component of daily life at Dunaway. Our staff and families strive to provide students multiple opportunities to learn. And this year so far, our students have learned from a DEA agent, a parent who is a firefighter, and a fossil expert. Additionally, our garden club has been led by our retired teacher, Susan Howard, and many master gardeners. During Hispanic Heritage Month, our students were invited to recite a poem at the Ellis County Hispanic Organization 16 de Septiembre celebration. ECHO also made a $500 donation to the DL program. We are grateful for the ways that our community helps to inspire our students at Dunaway.
Thank you so much for your time.
Board, next I'd like to invite Rusty East, principal of Coleman Junior High, to come up.
All right. Good evening, board. Dr. Hollingsworth. I'm excited to be able to report some of the great things that we are doing at Coleman Junior High. Also would like to echo Ms. Heimbuch's appreciation for each one of you and what you do for our district. It is awesome to work in a district that has board members like you. So tonight, to begin, we would like to recognize a staff member who has gone above and beyond at Coleman. Mrs. Brittany Webb. Come on up, Miss Webb. You're sitting in the back over there. Miss Webb was a part of the inaugural Coleman staff. She started as a paraprofessional and has transitioned to a social studies teacher, a good social studies teacher. She does 7th grade social studies for us. She also does our UIL coordination. She is our UIL coordinator. And I wanted to add, it's always rewarding to see staff grow, particularly where they started. So we are very, very appreciative of the job that Mrs. Webb does. So tonight we would like to recognize Ms. Webb with our Coleman Chiefs Excellence Award. Ms. Webb, thank you. Now, Miss Minton's going to help me here with these slides. What would I do without Miss Minton? She helps me in so many ways. Thank you, Miss Minton. To start, we would like to highlight some of the great things that we're doing, and we want to start with our Fine Arts Department, which aligns with our core value of choice. And we have an excellent Fine Arts Department. We want to talk about our UIL, our band. Last spring received the UIL Sweepstakes Winners Award. This fall, in the band competition, 34 chairs were awarded, 1 alternate, 3 first chairs, and that is a new campus record for Coleman. Our band thrives from the infant stages all the way to the high school, so I'm always in awe of what our band does. Also, we were 9th in the state of Texas Music Educators Honors Band. So we are proud of our band for those awards. Our theater department, Ms. Mulliken does an outstanding job there as well. Mike Huffstetler does our choir. If any of you got to go to our choir Christmas concert, that is always a treat. So we are very proud of our Fine Arts Department and that they value that core value of choice. Ms. Minton, let's slide over to our second highlight is our Coleman Career Day. Our Coleman Career Day, this is the second year that we've done that, and I have to tell you, the first year we did it, it was my first year at Coleman, and I was going, how is this going to work? But it is a fabulous opportunity for our kids and our community, which is also in line with our core value. This was our second annual one this year. And we get better and better at it. Every year you figure out a way to improve on it, and Ms. Woodley and Ms. Minton work together with our staff to provide our students with a great experience. So I would love for anybody to come be a part of that, and even if you just watch what we do. Some of the things that we have, 50 businesses and leaders come. We have college professors, city councilmen, D.A. Montgomery, Judge Wallace, our fire department, our police department. We also worked in collaboration with Miss Sandy King and the WHS CTE department. And students learn about careers and how to dress for success. They learn things like tying a tie, all of the skills that you would need. So it's a little bit different, but it's a really neat event. And for those kids to be able to interact with businessmen and leaders in our district, it's a really neat thing that we do, and we keep growing. And like I said at the beginning, you're kind of going, oh, how's this going to work? But they do a good job of organization. So as a principal, it's stressful, but the kids love it. So that is our Coleman Career Day. And finally, our Coleman service. Service is a big part of what we want to teach our kids. We want them to have pride in their community. We want them to have pride in their school. We want them to learn all of these things that are going to be important. We believe in the importance of teaching our students to serve not only school, but community and beyond. We participated this year in the Stuff the Bus with the high school. Our students serve our veterans on Veterans Day. That's another event that we would love to invite you to, that our students are able to serve those veterans and give back, and those veterans appreciate that. They also work with the Student in Need Fund in setting up for the craft fair with Ms. Kriegel. And our Dear Day readers, they help with that. 5th grade field day helpers, and they support the Market Strong organization. So in closing, I just want to say that we are very proud of our campus and our staff and our students, and we look forward to more great things at Coleman Junior High. So thank you very much.
Board, finally, this evening, we would like to recognize you. January is School Board Appreciation Month. As you can see, our students and campuses had fun putting together these beautiful signs and posters for you. We have also purchased a book for each elementary school library with a book plate in each one, recognizing you all for your service. This year's theme for School Board Appreciation Month is Forward Together, and we are so grateful for the many ways that you give our district forward momentum. We are so very appreciative of the many, many hours you give to make our district a great place to learn, work, and grow every day. Because of your leadership, Waxahachie ISD is a place where innovation thrives and growth is limitless, and we thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, I know some of you are camera shy, but if I could get all of you to come down for a quick picture, we'd love to take a picture of all of you with the signs the students made. And this one was too heavy for us to hang, but we would love for y'all to hold it if you don't mind. Yeah, just don't cover Miss Kriegel's face. Thank you, Board and Dr. Hollingsworth.
Next item on our agenda is our open forum. We did not have anyone signed up to speak tonight.
We're going to do that action meeting, sir.
So we're going to move down to action item C. We're going to go out of order for a little bit here. So action item C would be consideration to approve the hiring of our fine arts director. Dr. Hollingsworth, are you going to take that one?
Yes, sir, I am. I'm a big believer, and those who work with me on a regular basis, they've heard me say before, you interview for a job every day you go to work. And I am really, really pleased to inform you that our interim fine arts director, over the last several months, we put him in that role back in the summer, you'll recall, of this past year. And Sean Cagle has done a phenomenal job in the role of leading our fine arts department. Our fine arts department in Waxahachie ISD is really a gem for our entire school district. It is something of which we are very proud. On a real routine basis, we recognize different students and teachers and folks who are involved with our fine arts programs. And I am so pleased to announce that we are recommending to the board tonight that he be named as our Director of Fine Arts. Sean is not only a student-centered leader, he is very much a listener. He listens to the staff that he leads. He responds to them, and I'm really, really pleased to bring his name forward to you tonight for recommendation and approval as our new Fine Arts Director.
Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve Mr. Sean Cagle as our Fine Arts Director.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kriegel. Second by Ms. Timmermans. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations.
Next item on our agenda will be our public hearing. Tonight, we'll be holding a public hearing regarding the Texas Academic Performance Report, also known as TAPER. Following the presentation, we will invite the public to approach the podium and provide input on the subject at hand. The public hearing will begin with a presentation by Dawn Hilburn, Director of Assessment and Accountability. Mrs. Hilburn.
All right, I'm having to follow instructions up here to get going. Good evening, Board and Dr. Hollingsworth. I'm here to present to you the 21-22 TAPER report. If you've seen it, I know it was in your board packet. I know a lot of you reviewed it. It's 32 pages jam-packed of data. And we're going to condense that down in 13 pages. Hopefully when I'm done, you're going, yes, I totally get all of this. I also included the glossary within that. The glossary is 46 pages. So it is a lot of stuff, and sometimes I have to refer back to that myself. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I did the format a little bit different this year. This is what you call a data dashboard. It's something new that a lot of school districts are doing with data analytics. This is part of a T-class grant we got through TEA, and this is what we're doing for our teachers. We're making data dashboards to make data much more user-friendly, and teachers aren't having to look it up and all that. I think so far we've made 42 dashboards for our teachers, and and our campus administration this year. Couldn't do it alone, though. My assistant, Connie Huerta, oh my gosh, I couldn't do it without her. And we actually got Debbie Needham out of retirement. So she does this part-time and helps us out as well. So let's get to it. What is TAPER? It's a disaggregation of data based off students, staff, STAR scores, ACT, SAT, all that type of information. So on the left-hand side, you'll see there, the first thing we have to go over is our accountability rating. So if you remember, we got a B. It was right at an 85, and so we're right in line almost where we were prior to COVID, just a little bit lower, but compared to what we've been through, we're doing a great job. And then you'll see below that special education determination status. Every school district has to have this, and you can see there's 4 levels there, meets requirements down to needs substantial intervention, so our district scored the highest on that. And then we're required to also have a PEIMS financial standard report. I know nothing about it, so if you have any questions on that, this would be the man to discuss about that, but I do have to at least put that in the report for you. So on the right-hand side, there's 13 things that we're going to go over, and then I've also included a lot of links in here that if you want to click on something and know a little bit more about it or look at the glossary or pull a different report, you can do that as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the first part. This is our accountability ratings. And so what you'll see is you have 2022 and then you have 19. And you go, Ms. Hilburn, what happened in between? Well, COVID's what happened in between. And then when we came back and we actually had testing, what happened was, if you remember, it was declared natural disaster and no one had a rating. And so that's why there's a gap in that. So you can kind of see a comparison. The green, of course, are your A's, the blues are your B's, the C's are the yellows. And you can kind of see where we were. We're not too far off from prior to COVID. The great thing about a data dashboard is it is interactive. And so 3 things in an accountability domain is domain 1 is student achievement. What is that? It's all about STAR scores. The second one is school progress. What is that? It's all about growth, which falls right in line with our scorecard 1.1, which is about student growth. And then there's closing the gaps, which is all about different student populations. If you wanted to look at this a little closer, I could click on student achievement. It's going to put them all in order. If I wanted to put it in order in reverse, I could do that as well. If I wanted to see which campuses are showing the most growth, then I could click right there. So it's very interactive and something that you probably already figured out before today, but if you want to go back and play with that afterwards, then you can do that as well. Our next slide is based off our STAR scores. So if you remember, there's 4 performance levels. There's do not meets, there's approaches, there's meets, and there's masters. And I have a little definition for each of those and what it really means. Approaches is the minimum standard for a student to pass, and then a master's, of course, is the highest. These gauges here show you overall as a district how we performed in each of those. As a data person and as a campus principal, they would always want to look at 90, 60, 30. Our goal is for this to be 90, this to be 60, and this to be 30 in order to be an A campus. Now, there's a lot more to that, but that's a gauge that we want to look at and see. And these are the type of dashboards we're doing for teachers to see how close we are within that. But then if you look down a little bit more here, we broke it down by subject. So we have social studies, science, reading, and math. And you can tell how we did in each of those areas from your do not meets, your approaches, your meets, and your masters. But I can manipulate this a little bit more, and maybe I only want to see 3rd grade, because 3rd grade is those kids that were in kindergarten when COVID hit. And we know at that early ages, that's prime time for really making sure our kids are where they need to be. So I can just look at 3rd grade data here. The blue is math, and the yellow is our English. And you can tell across the state, math is a little bit lower than English because of that COVID slide. Down here is the exact same way, but what we're able to do is we're able to compare to the state, the region, and the district for our different performance levels and approaches, meets, and masters. And so I can see here, this is 3rd grade masters. The state was 30%, the region was 32%, and we were at 29%. So we're right there, but maybe a little off. But there may be another area where we were higher than the state or region. So again, this is something that you can play around with that's manipulative. If you want to compare it and say, well, I just want to look where the district was so we can compare where the state, then it puts it all in order to see where we're the highest at. Okay, next up is our dropout rates. And I've put some definitions up here. Not every dropout counts against us. These are the things that would not count against us. It breaks it down into 2 categories, not through 12 and then 7 through 8. We're in the green, the region's in the red, and the state is in the blue. So you can see where this was 1920 data, this is 2021 data, and you say, Ms. Hilburn, we're doing 21-22 taper report. You'll see a lot of information within the taper report is what we call a lagging indicator. So it's a year behind. In fact, I think there's one part on here that's 2 years behind. Some will be on target, some won't. The key thing in looking here is you can tell we're at 1%, we're at 1.1%, so we're well below the region, the state, as far as our dropouts for 9 through 12. 7 through 8 is even better. We were 0.1% compared to the state and the region, and we were 0% last year. Then we go down to longitudinal graduation rates. And this is actually, if you want to know more about this one, this is a great one to look up in the glossary. I even have it. It's on page 9 through 12 if you're interested in that. But what this means is a typical high school student will graduate in 4 years. But sometimes something comes up. Maybe the student drops out and comes back. Maybe the student gets behind in credits. So we can still gain them as a graduate if we look at the 5-year longitudinal graduation rate. And I'm trying to move that over so we can see it better. Well, we'll leave it right there. You can see here what it does is it breaks things down as far as you have dropout rates, you have those continued in high school, you have, this is what we generally mean as a student that got their GED. This is a percentage that graduated, and of course this is dropout. You can see where the state was, where the region is, and where the district is compared to that. So then this is your 5 years. So this would mean a student was supposed to graduate in 4 years, but they did it in 5 years, and we accumulate that graduation percentage, and then of course there is the 6 year. Then we have our percentage of programs by graduation type. See if I can move this over a little bit for y'all. Every time I move down, the bar moves. And so this can get kind of tricky on what each of them means. I put a link right here. This is a side-by-side comparison. So we have minimum high school program, graduation program. We have a distinguished achievement program, recommended high school program, and also a foundation program. What does it really all mean? It's the number of credits that a student needs to graduate. We typically know a 4x4s. You need 4 English, 4 science, 4 math, and 4 social studies, but some of these may require a little less than that. Also, some of them are going to require an endorsement where others are not. So again, anything in the green is Waxahachie ISD, anything in the red is the state, and then the region is in the blue. But these are all of them combined together, so we're right there with everybody. This is the foundation high school program, distinguished level of achievement graduates, and then this is the foundation high school program with an endorsement. So it just breaks them all down. This is graduation profile by ethnicity. So you can see and we'll look at that a little bit more in a minute. It looks a little bit different from the state, but this is our overall ethnicity populations versus what the state is. Then we have a graduation profile by graduation type, which is what we really kind of looked up at the top. It breaks it down. You can say, well, the state's beating us here, but we're beating them there. So at the end of the day, it's truly looking at the number of graduations, the percentage that graduated. So this is graduation profile by ethnicity. So you can see where the district is, where we are compared by each one of those ethnicity groups. Excuse me, I can't talk. And then at the bottom portion here, I actually did it just in a pie chart so you can see a little bit different where we are. We do look different from the state. And this is graduation profile by student groups. So you have at risk, economically disadvantaged, and so on. Then moving up, growth. Again, 1.1 on our scorecard. So talking about growth, what we did here on this graph, this is domain 2 of our accountability piece. And what it does is it only looks at reading and math. Why is that? Because reading and math are the only 2-star tests that a student takes every single year. So that's the way you can compare those. The easy way to manipulate this is to click right here. Okay? What it will show us is anything in the green was growth. Okay, if I click on it again, and so we can go and see, hey, 6th grade reading, look what they did. They knocked it out of the park and improved 23% there. 5th grade math went up 21%. But you'll see a lot of it is reading except for that math. But if you scroll down, or if I click up here at the top, then we see the ones in the red that are going to typically be our math, which is our area, not only our area struggle, but also across the state. So again, you can manipulate that as well. This is what we call accelerated growth. Every time a student gets a star score, the state moves it in what we call limited, accelerated, or expected growth. And so this shows you can also break it down by grade level if you wanted to do that to see maybe where our biggest growth is. But typically we're right in line. So this is 2019 data. This is 2020 data. We fell a little bit here. But again, I think we're right in line with what the state and the region is doing. Then we have student information. We just listed information here, so it's not interactive, but we have students by grade level. You know, I was even looking at this, I think, on Friday. That 9th grade group was big here, but now it's over 1,000. So that growth piece is for real. Instructional programs breaks it down bilingual, gifted and talented, your special education. We have our student populations, your at risk, your EBs. And remember, a student can be in more than one category on this. And what I did is, Ms. Kriegel, I know you always have a question, great questions about the at risk. And so I actually put a link down here if you had more questions about what does it mean for a student to be at risk. Then we have broken down our students by ethnicities. We just listed numbers. This is our class average based off each grade level and where the state is and where we are. So you can see we're right in line, if not lower. And then I also put some definitions down here as well. Then we have attendance. And this I know Dr. Hollingsworth talks about a lot, and it is a for real thing because this is that 2019-20 data compared to 2021. You can see we were at 98% plus. And then this past year, we were at that 94% rate. But you can see it wasn't just us. It was the state and region as well. This is where it really shows up. It's our chronic absenteeism. So this is all students K through 12 that were at least here 10 days that are absent 10% of the days they were here. You can see what it was during that COVID time, and then you can see what it is after COVID. And so getting kids to school is a continued push that we want them here, and they can't learn if they're not here. So I know we'll continue to have discussions about that and the importance of kids being in school. Then we have what's called our CCMR. It's our college and career and military readiness. And so students are either college ready, they're military ready, or they're career ready. And so there's certain categories here. Whoops, that didn't work. There's certain categories here that students have to qualify for in order to be one of those. And so the first one for college ready is what we call TSIA. This is typically a test a student would take before they went to junior college, where a student that went to a university would take SAT or ACT. What we want to look at here is both subjects, because a student doesn't earn or able to earn a CCMR point if they don't earn that criteria in both subjects. And so you can see here's the region, the state. I believe we're over to the side. Y'all, I'm sorry about this. Every time, there we go. You can see we're right in line with both of them, so we're doing what we need to do there. This next one here is based off our information on, it's still AP, and so it's our number of students who have got a 3 or higher on an AP test. And so you can see what our percentage was to the state, and actually I believe that was the participation part. And I apologize, y'all. Y'all see every time I go down there, it moves. Well, this is participation, and what I'll tell you with this is typically we don't have as many students participate, but the one that we do have participate, which we'll show in this lower graph down here, is we score higher than the state and the region. So you can see that at a 30%, and this is that 3 or higher in any of the subjects, and a 29% compared to the state and the region. And this is our special ed students. These are our IEP completers, so what it really means is they met their goals. And so we're at higher rate also as the state and the region. And then if we go back up to the top, this is our career-ready students. And so these are the students that had a level 1 or level 2 certificate. Again, we're scoring higher than the state and region on that. The bottom part's the same thing, but it's also an industry-based certification. So you can see we're at a 17.3% here that's really blowing the region out of the water, and we're really a lot higher than the state, and even higher on this next, which was 2021. And then these were the annual graduates that got a CCMR point. So they were either college or career ready or IEP complete. So what it says is in 2021, 65% of our students were complete for that, according to the state. Then this bottom part is our CCMR indicators based off AP. So you have all subjects, you have English, you have math, you have science and social studies. This is that participation piece again that we're working on to get more kids to take the test. So we are lower than the region and the state, but if you look at the graph below it, you can tell that our kids are taking it, are scoring higher than the region or their state. So it's kind of one of those healthy balance type deals. You don't want probably everybody taking it, but we want to make sure we have the right kids taking it. And this next part is based off our SAT and ACT. Our numbers, and actually across the state, could be a little bit lower on this as well. If you know from COVID, a lot of universities don't require SAT and ACT anymore. I think we're getting back into the groove, but we're not quite there yet. But if you can see this, and so the top part, we're going to look at SAT and ACT combined. This is what this first graph is. So these are annual graduates who took it. So 51.2% of our kids that graduated in 20 took SAT or ACT. Over on this side in 2021, we jumped up a little bit. 53.6% of our students that were our annual graduates took SAT or ACT. This next part is MET criteria. And so SAT and ACT both have a criteria, and it's up here if you want to narrow it down a little bit more. But again, you can see what our students did here. This is all students, and this is our graduate students. And so again, this is MET criteria. And this is, again, in 2021, all students, and you can tell we're scoring higher than the region and the state, and this was our graduates for that year, which was 2021. Then we scroll down a little bit more. We have SAT criteria. So this is breaking it down. It will tell you for SAT, the maximum score you can make is 1,600. For English and math, it's at 800 apiece, and you can see where our average falls for our students. And so again, district is green, and then a region is red, and the state is blue. So you can see we're scoring higher in both years, 1920 and 2021. And down here is the same thing, but this is ACT. Remember, ACT is going to look at English, it's going to look at math, and it's going to look at science as well. But our overall score, our kids are scoring better. Then we have our other post-secondary indicators. This is really looking at those students that took an advanced or dual credit course and they completed it. So these are percentages of those students that at least took an advanced level course compared to the state and region. This is 1920, this is 2021. So we had some gains in 2021 on some of these. You can tell social studies looks like that favorite one that most students are taking as far as advanced courses are concerned. And really for math, we're right on up there as well. This can also be manipulated just like any of the others if I want to look at the district in a row and see where we're doing the highest, which is in social studies, and then it's science, and then it's English, and then it's math. So you can manipulate that anyway as well. Then we have our staff information. Staff information is just really broken down by the ethnicity of all our staff, by teachers by gender. We have average teacher salary by years. This is always a comparison that everyone likes to look at. Teachers' years of experience, which I always think is telling for our district because we have great tenure for our teachers and wanting to be in Waxahachie ISD, which I think is a compliment for what we're doing here. Teachers by the highest degree held from no degree to a doctorate. And then average salary for regular duties. And then we come down here to experience by campus leadership. So this only compares the district and the state. It will not put the region in there. And this is the number of teachers or average and percent of teachers that we have based off each program. And you can also compare that to the state. This is something new. It is actually part of the taper, but we pull this from what we call the TPRS. And this was pre-K information. And so this truly gave us a number of students that maybe, and there's some good definitions down here that might say the percentage of students that attended pre-K, or maybe the percentage of students that were eligible for pre-K that did not attend it. And there's some percentages up here. For example, this is percent ready for kindergarten in 2021. This is where we still have our learning data dashboard. We, for the life of us, couldn't get this changed to a percent, but of course that's a percent, 62%, and so on. And so I thought this was some interesting data because pre-K is such an important piece for students to get a great start, that hopefully we can use this data to get many more involved in pre-K that maybe are not. And then last slide, we have what we call accelerated testers. What does that mean? It's 8th grade students that take Algebra 1. The criteria for that, and it's a federal requirement, they have to take SAT or ACT and score a certain score. And so this information actually just came in too that I sent to all the campuses, and we're already working on getting that 83% up. I'm not sure how the region does 95%. That's a great job. And I know like for some kids we didn't get because maybe they're high school choice and they already graduated early. So we're working on getting that percentage up. And then this last part is what we call 60-30. And so truly what this is the state's goal of 60% of our 25 to 34-year-olds by 2030 will have some type of certificate or degree. And so you can see where the state is, where the region is, and where we are. So we're above what the state and the region's doing right now in this area as well. So I know that was lots of information, and I probably talked really, really fast. Hopefully, yeah. But hopefully you got some good information out of there. So do y'all have any questions for me that maybe I can try to answer or get you an answer for?
I think this is gonna be a get you answer for, Don, back to page 68 or 58, talking about the kindergarten readiness.
Uh-huh.
I would like, and I don't know, it may be on this, computer, I'd like to, see it by campus. What campuses, you know, it broken down, how many of the students are kindergarten ready? What percentage? Because I think that really shows how much the kindergartens are having to catch the kids.
And that'd probably be something I might have to work with Ms. Maud on or Dr. Binnicker so we can narrow that down, because all the state's going to give us is not student names but percentages, but we can definitely work on that.
It's not going to give you it doesn't give you.
It won't give it to me by campus. So really, we took what the state has. I'll double check it because this is what we call the TPRS. This is where we pulled this data from, and I actually hadn't seen this before, but I'll do some more research for you and I can reach back out to you.
Okay, I looked for it online and I couldn't find it. And could you, I don't know, do we have this report on our, did you send it to us?
The TPRS, I did not.
No, this entire report that you just gave us.
Yes, it's a link.
You gave it to us in a link? Okay.
I believe it's in your board report. If not, I can send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Thank you. All right, thank y'all.
Don, I really just want to say thank you not only on the report here, but thank you for the work for your department, your team on the dashboard.
Yes, thank you.
It's just such an invaluable tool. I know it's something that our principals are using on a real regular basis too,
Yes,
so thank you.
thank you, Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at this time, are there any individuals that would wish to speak concerning the Texas Academic Performance Report, also known as TAPER? Going once, twice. We will now close the public hearing portion of this meeting. Okay, our next item will be our reports, Superintendent's report. Dr. Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. As soon as we get that fixed. All right. Okay, as I bring to y'all each month, these are your enrollment numbers to end December 31st. We ended with 10,831 students, and then our average daily attendance was at 98.93. We really got hurt in November on attendance rates, a lot of flu and other illnesses going around. We did begin to see some rebounding of that in December, and we hope to continue to increase that. I will tell you that our enrollment has continued to rise as well. I know that we opened up the first day of school when we got back, and I know I'm only reporting on the end of December. We opened up with over 10,900 kids. And so we're pushing up on that 11,000 mark. You will recall we hit 10,000 right after my arrival in September of 21. And so we've almost grown by 1,000 kids since my arrival in August of 21. So just that tremendous growth that continues. I wanted to share with y'all a couple of maps that you may have seen before, but I wanted to point them out to the board because I shared this with all of our staff. I shared this with you back in the fall, but I wanted to share an additional map, but I want to provide some context first. People will ask us from time to time, do we really need to have a conversation about a second high school? And do we really have to be a second comprehensive high school, a third comprehensive high school district? And this is, I think, a real telling map because it shows you a picture. There are two single high school districts that are on this sheet. Allen ISD, y'all know, is one of the largest high schools in America. Allen has right at 6,000 kids in their high school. Allen, however, is a 29 square mile district that is almost built out. And so I think it's really powerful to look at this map and see that they're in a very different boat than we are. Carroll ISD, Southlake Carroll, y'all are all familiar with them. They are a single high school district. They have 20 square miles. It's a tiny district by comparison to us. Prosper ISD is 58 square miles. Y'all know Prosper is actually growing faster than we are right now. They're north of Frisco. They have 2 comprehensive high schools, and they're about to open their 3rd comprehensive high school. They have 58 square miles. And there's Waxahachie ISD. Waxahachie has 191.6 square miles. Our southernmost campus is about where that white Waxahachie ISD is written. That's where Dunaway is. That's our southernmost campus. So I think that really paints a picture. Here's another really useful map, I think, and it's one that I've been sharing with our staff, and I thought y'all would like to see as well. If you want to peer into the future of where our district may end up, there's Louisville ISD. All of these districts, one thing they have in common is they are within that 30 miles of either Dallas or Fort Worth. Louisville is a great example. Louisville is about 40 years in front of us on the growth curve. Louisville is 30 miles from downtown Dallas, but on the northwest of Dallas, where we're due south. Louisville has 5 comprehensive high schools. Louisville, Hebron, the Colony, Flower Mound, and Flower Mound Marcus. 5 large comprehensive high schools. Mansfield, we're all more familiar with because it's close to us. Mansfield, y'all know, we think of Mansfield as being really big. They are a little closer into Fort Worth. They're also about 30 miles from downtown Dallas. Mansfield is half our geographic size. They have 94 square miles. They have 5 comprehensive high schools. They have an early college high school like Global, and they have a CTE center that serves all of those high schools. Effectively, they have 7 high school campuses in Mansfield ISD. And then there's Northwest. Northwest looks a lot more like us because Northwest is on the north side of Fort Worth. They are, that's where Texas Motor Speedway is, the Alliance Corridor, Alliance Airport. Northwest, on the southern portion that's closer to Fort Worth, Northwest looks very suburban, kind of like we do up in the North Grove area. But if you push out further toward the northwest of Northwest ISD, you get closer to Decatur, and they still kind of look like we are. They're still rural as you push out further on the north end of Northwest ISD. They're a little bigger than we are. They're 252 square miles. Northwest has 3 comprehensive high schools. They have an early college high school, and they are planning their 4th comprehensive high school. So you get the gist of where we're going with this. If you look at our demographic data shows that we need a 2nd comprehensive high school to hold 3,200 kids in the late 20s. We will need a 3rd comprehensive high school to hold 3,200 kids as we approach the late 30s and going into the 40s. And so that I think it really paints a powerful picture that I wanted to be sure that I'm sharing with y'all as well. Finally, I wanted to share this with you. This is also in our slides that we're sharing with our staff. You can see our current capacity if you were able to use every single seat that we have available. The capacity needed by 32-33, which is over 17,000 seats, and then your capacity by 42-43. That's a 20-year look at where we're going to be, but you can see at that point we'll need over 12,500 elementary seats, almost 6,000 junior high seats, and you'll see that our numbers for high school will be over 8,000 students in the high school level by the early 40s. So I always like to point out that seems like forever away, but little Henry McCutcheon will graduate probably around, 40? 39 or 40, he'll be in that class. So this is not forever away. It's just around the corner for us. So.
Okay, our next item on the report will be presentation of the annual financial audit report from the fiscal year that ended on August 31st, 2022.
For tonight, I'd like to introduce you to Mike Vale of the firm Vale and Park CPAs. He's here to present the audit report for the fiscal year ending August 31, 2022.
Thank you. Can I just take a little, see if I can set this here. I brought hard copies just in case the electronics didn't work, so.
Preview of your next line, just hit it in the middle.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, well, happy to be here. happy to meet all of you. I'm here to present the fiscal year 2022 audit results. And I would start out with the agenda. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the objectives and scope of the audit, go over the audit results, cover some financial highlights, findings, recommendations, and then have a Q&A period at the very end. The objective of the audit, the main objective is TEA requires it. You have annual audit requirements, and that's section 44.008A and 44008D. And for the scope of the audit, we perform a full scope audit. We perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. We follow what's called Yellow Book, and that's auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We document and test internal accounting controls. We perform a risk assessment to determine our substantive audit procedures and the nature, extent, and timing of our testing. And we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And what that means is we're not testing 100% of the transactions. We do sampling, and we also focus on higher risk areas when we perform the audit. And with the board's approval of the draft audit report, and Ryan, does everybody have a copy of the audit report in their package? Okay, excellent. We will issue the following reports with the approval of the draft audit report. Independent auditors report on the financial statements, and that's considered a clean opinion. Independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting. Report on compliance of each major program and on internal control over compliance required by uniform guidance. And that's for single audit related to federal grant money the district receives. On the financial statements in the report that's in your packet, there's several sections that I'd like to point out. It's a 90-page report, so it's pretty voluminous. But the first section that I'd like to point out is the government-wide financial statements, and that is on a full accrual basis, and that's pages 9 through 11. And what that means on full accrual basis, it shows the outstanding debt as well as your capital assets. On the fund financial statements, that's on pages 12 to 24, and that is prepared on a modified accrual basis, and that does not show your capital assets or your debt. It's not cash flow, but it's not accrual. It's in between. On pages 25 through 53, we have the notes to financial statements, and that can be very helpful. It's got certain line items of the financial statement. It'll give more detail, whether it's your capital assets, long-term debt, and other areas. There's additional information, required supplementary information, pages 55 to 62. And I wanted to point this out because this has your budgetary comparison information, which is very important. Also, it has some pension disclosure. On pages 64 to 73, there's some combining statements that show some individual funds that are grouped together at the front financial statements. So if you want to see more detail, that's a good place to look. There's some required TEA schedules. That's pages 76 to 79. And then the federal awards section, which is single audit, that's pages 83 to 91. And just to point out some financial highlights, on page 5, that's in the management discussion and analysis section. Just some key points to make here. I like the MD&A because it shows the this year versus last year. So you can kind of see the changes between the 2 years. And on this, your long-term debt decreased due to bond principal payments and also a reduction in net pension liability. Your deferred inflows of resources increased due to changes in OPEB and pension plan valuation. Now, you don't have much control over that. That's actuaries that come up with that, and that changes depending on what their report says. And then proprietary cash increased by $2.5 million, and that was due to Child Nutrition Fund. On page 5 as well, at the bottom of that table, there's revenues, and there was an increase of $2.3 million related to school health and related services program. Also, property tax revenues increased from $70 million to $77 million due to an increase in appraised values. On the general fund is usually where we focus because it's where the board and the district has the most discretion in terms of spending. And there's a total, and this is page 15 of the report. The total fund balance is $24.5 million. Total expenditures is $106 million for general fund. And the general fund's financial position, we like to do a calculation where we take the unassigned general fund balance, we divide that by the expenditures for the general fund, annual expenditures, and we multiply that by 12. And what that gives us is if the district had no money coming in, how many months could the district survive, basically? And that calculation is 2.75 months, and that's very healthy. We generally recommend 3 months or greater, but you're right there at where we expect you to be. And then on other matters, we did not have any internal control weaknesses or big issues that we found in relation to internal controls, and we didn't have any disagreements with management. We're just really impressed with your financial team that you have here. They're outstanding, really, really good to work with and very knowledgeable. And I think you have a very professional staff here. So, and we just like to thank Ryan and Wendy and the whole support administration team. They were very responsive to any requests we had, and that closes out my part of the presentation. But we can open it up to any questions that you may have.
Any questions on the annual financial audit report? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, board, moving to item 10 is our consent agenda. We have items A through K. As you know, we can take these all in one motion. Or if there is an individual one to be removed for discussion.
I move we approve items A through K on the consent agenda.
A motion by Mr. McCutcheon, second by Mr. Schofield. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item number 11 will be our action items. Be consideration with possible approval for the fiscal year ending August 31, 2022 audit report as presented. Any questions for Mr. Calden? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve action item A. Motion by Mr. Schofield. Second by Ms. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. And our last action item will be consideration action to approve a staging area agreement with LC Paving and Construction LLC for the purpose of allowing construction material storage on district-owned property near Wildman Field related to a public works construction project along Bryson Street. Mr. Alvashine.
Thank you, Mr. President, Board, Dr. Hollingsworth. At your most recent meeting, you approved a staging agreement to support the expansion of HEB. Similar to that, but with a different focus. We've been approached by another construction firm, this time relating to a public works project. The city of Waxahachie has approved a water main construction project on Bryson Street. And so LC Paving and Construction, who is the contractor that's been approved by the city to do the work, has reached out to us seeking help. They need a staging area and would like to utilize the old parking in front of the old credit union building adjacent to Wildman Field. It's not a particular piece of property that the district is using right now. It is fenced. They will actually bring in their own fencing materials to make it even more secure. It is not something that will cause any detriment to the district's use at all. I have talked to Ms. Offier, principal of Wildman Elementary. We may wind up having some traffic flow issues at Wildman Elementary. during the spring, but it won't be because of this pad site that we're discussing. It's just the nature of the project on Bryson Street, and she'll be able to help notify our parents to utilize Gibson Street on the days where there may be some congestion or traffic flow switch. But this evening, we asked the board to approve the staging area agreement that's presented in your packet. LC Paving and Construction has agreed to all the same terms that Spring Valley Construction agreed, in the form of taking care of the property, keeping it safe and secure, restoring the property to its original state when the project is completed, and allowing students the opportunity, WHS and CTE, construction trade students, the opportunity to come out and see a construction project in the process of performing the work. And in this case, it's a public works project, the water main construction. We urge approval this evening.
Questions for Mr. Alvin? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve action item B as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Timmerman,
Second.
second by Ms. Kriegel. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Sir. Item 12 will be comments from individual board members. And the board members will comment on items of community interest, including expression of thanks, congratulations, or condolence information regarding holiday schedules, recognition of public official, public employee, or other citizen, and reminders about upcoming district events. And I will not make the same mistake I made last time. Starnator, you get to go first.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Dawn Hilburn for an amazing report, and it's always so thorough, and it's so easy to understand, so thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Cagle, and welcome back, staff, for the spring semester. So here we go.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes, I think in the last week or two, we had a request by one of our elementary campuses for some folks to come and do some financial literacy for the kids. Our former trustee, Matt Authier, as well as Ron Colvin, went and talked to the kids, and I think that's very important. And I know your ego is already pretty big right now after that budget report, but I'll pump it up a little bit more for you. Yeah, so thank you.
Ms. Timmerman?
I have two. I'd like to thank the Waxahachie Police Department for being such great partners for our district. They help us out a lot, so I want to recognize them. I also want to recognize and thank Dr. Vinegar and all those that worked on iNation. It was outstanding. So please let your people know that we appreciate that.
Mr. Schofield?
Thank you, Mr. Calden, for having your gazentas in order. Use my silly mathematical terms. Something I've noticed that my tenure on the board is we don't have financial issues, and I do appreciate that. Ms. Hilburn, I'm glad you can talk fast still, too. She used to teach with me, but she's still good at it.
Ms. Kriegel?
I wanted to thank Ms. Hilburn also. She did a wonderful job of presenting it for the data. And I wanted to thank the Kiwanis Club because they have started a clothing closet for our students, and it is a wonderful asset to all of our counselors, and I just think that's great that they were able to do that.
Mr. Rogers?
And thank you, Dawn, as well. That was very, very good, very informative report. And thank you to the two campuses, or all the campuses that gave us gifts as well. Thank you.
So I'll sum it up by, I want to recognize our technology department, Joe O'Daniel. We've had two unfortunate events that have happened as far as security goes in our school district in the last week. Waxahachie Police Department, Mr. Oliver, Ms. Harris with your staff at the high school. I don't believe those things could not have been solved any faster and with as little interruption as possible. And I just wanted to recognize you guys before we close tonight. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I just want to say to the board, I want to just say thank you to all of you on Board Appreciation Month. I just want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to work with each of you. And one thing that I get the benefit of seeing that a lot of people don't is the heart that y'all all bring to the job, how it is that you really do care for the best interests of this whole community. And I just want to say thank you. I'm honored to be able to work alongside you.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yes, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Rogers. Second by Mr. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0.